is still in good condition. Okay, it does look like we have a couple of people. Feel free to say hi in the chat, ask any questions that you have throughout the presentation. My name's Amanda, and I'm going to be teaching about Canva design tips and creating functional and accessible designs. And we're going to go over what those terms mean and what a design needs, or what your media that you are sharing needs in order to be functional and accessible. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the first slide here. And we're going to take a look at these designs. Are these designs functional and accessible? If not, why? If you have a way to take notes, it might be good to be like, okay, I'm looking at these two designs. What about them do I see that I would change? So you can go ahead and take a moment and look at them and try to come up with some reasons. I'm sure you'll be able to think of at least one right off the bat. But yeah, so if you're watching this video after the fact, feel free to pause here and write some things down. So I'm going to go ahead and just start pointing out things, and you can see if you were pointing out some of the same ones. One of the big ones that I'm going to talk about first is how many different fonts these designs use. If you'll notice, the one on the left, big, bold, booming, Hollywood event, August 12th, all 5 of those lines are different fonts. And then I think that same Hollywood event font is their body text down there, the "come along with us," such and such. And then, they add their other fonts in throughout that as well. Another thing that you might notice is the way that these designs layer their text over images, making it harder for the viewer to read those images. And another thing is the choice of color. On the Hollywood event, it seems to be a beach event. I'm even after reading this entire thing, I'm still kind of confused as to what the event is, but the beach picture gives me the impression that it's on the beach, but you don't really know. And their color palette, it does not scream beach or summer to me, or even Hollywood, honestly. And then on the right design, one of the things we're going to notice is one of the images they chose is of some birds flocking. First of all, I'm not sure what that has to do with recycling day. And second of all, it's kind of hard to tell what the image is. When I look at these images, I do not feel anywhere my eyes can rest. I am not interested in trying to decipher what any of them are saying. And if I were to come across one of these images on Facebook, or if I saw a flyer somewhere with these kind of images on them, I probably wouldn't even look at it, because I would take one glance and just be like, no, that's too busy, no thank you. Another thing you'll find about these designs as we go on is that they are not incredibly accessible designs, meaning people who have color blindness or have trouble reading are not going to be able to access these images. And there are a couple of other reasons I'm sure they're not accessible that we'll get to in just a moment. I'm going to move on to our next slide now. So here are some things that functional designs need. The first one is contrast. When you use color and font in your design, you want to use contrast to draw attention to different aspects of your design, as well as to make your text stand out on top of whatever your background is, or in an image you want to use contrast so that it doesn't get muddied. When people are looking at it from further away, you want them to be able to identify what the item is so that they're drawn to move closer to it if it's a flyer, for example. Another element your functional design is going to need is direction. When you are creating a design, you're going to want to lead your viewers through it. Tell your viewer, what am I supposed to pay attention to first? What is the most important information? Create a hierarchy of importance on your design. And when you are putting it all together, does it flow? Can I settle on your image, know where to start and where to go next and where to go next until I have all the information that you want me to have from the design you've made? The third thing you're going to want is consistency, choosing how to align your elements and sticking to that formula. That doesn't mean that literally everything in your design has to be on the right side of the page, but it does mean if you have a specific part of your design that is going to be on the right side of the page, you want to align it on the right side and not have some things over on the right side, some things over on the left, where you're jumping back and forth too much. Your design will get busy and people will not want to stay there and look at it for a long amount of time. If you're making a piece of art and you want to do it like a Jackson Pollock and you want splatters of color and things like that everywhere, that's totally fine. But when you're making a graphic design that has the purpose of advertising either a service that you're offering or a product that you're selling, or you just want to talk about the place that you work, or you're branding yourself, etc., you want to keep your designs consistent and easy to look at. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is efficiency in designs for functionality. Every element in your design should serve a purpose. It's another element of just making sure it's not too busy, and that, like in the previous example we showed, if you're doing a recycling flyer, there's not really a reason to have a flock of birds in the corner. Okay, so, and throughout this I am going to talk to you about how Canva helps us find and produce functional designs. So let's talk about contrast. And first thing we're going to talk about is the color wheel. You probably know what one of those looks like, but if not, it is just a wheel of color. If you go to text, open up text and say new color, your color wheel is just the colors of the rainbow aligned in a circle. And you can use the color wheel to help you figure out which colors are complementary to each other, neighbor colors, etc. Things that are going to work well in design. And oftentimes in design, you're going to want to pair complementary colors for contrast, and you're going to pick harmonic, I think is what they're called, colors, which are ones that are next to each other on the color wheel to create a gradient or a mood. So if you're using warm colors, it's going to be more fun and poppy or beachy and exciting. And if you're using more cool colors, it's going to have more of a calming effect. But as far as contrast is concerned, the first thing you're going to think about is complementary colors. That means colors that are opposite themselves on the color wheel. So red and green, blue and orange, purple and yellow are going to be complementary colors. And you can do some more research on that when you are creating designs. I don't want to spend too long on just one thing, but yeah, the main thing is consult the color wheel when you're just deciding which colors you want to use on your design, and look up things about color. I don't like saying color psychology, but color meaning, I guess, just the kind of feelings that certain colors evoke and then what is my graphic design and what am I trying to accomplish. Another thing to think about is 2 to 4 colors per design. You don't need a ton of color if you're wanting to create a functional and accessible design, keeping it simple, make a color family, or make a color palette for your design and stick to it. A very easy way to do this is to use Canva styles. If you go over to the left side of your screen on Canva, there's going to be a tab called Styles. If you click that, it's going to show you color palettes that you can use, that they are tried and true, and they already have contrast built into them. You're going to see some of them have more than others. So depending on the type of design that you are trying to create, you might want to pick a different palette, depending. But you can already see that there are good levels of contrast inside of these color palettes. Another good way to decide on a color palette, if you're not super artistically inclined or very well versed in color theory, because we don't all need to know everything about everything, is colors.co. And this website will also help you pick out, color palettes, and it will generate them. So you can just say, start the generator. And it will even give you the hex codes, so you could create your color palette in Colors and then bring those hex codes over into Canva designs. So you could pick your hex code right from over here, copy it and paste, and you'll copy it over here, and then you'll come over here and you'll select new color and paste it. You can also, if you have Canva Pro, create a brand kit, which is available on the front page. There'll just be a button that says brand kit, and you can enter hex codes there too and create your own palette. Another way that Canva helps you decide the colors that you're going to use is it'll tell you, if you put a photo in your design, which colors are present in that design, and so you could use those even to come up with a palette if you want to use a photo for your inspiration or your jump off point. But you notice these palettes have more than 2 or 4 colors in them. I would start with one of them and then decide, okay, I'm going to use these 2 colors from inside this palette, or I'm going to use these 4 colors from inside this palette. It's not impossible to use more, but as far as making your design cohesive and easy for and to have accessibility for people with color blindness, it'll be better. We'll talk more about that in a later slide. So those are my tips for color and how Canva kind of already has some templates waiting for you. The next on the list is font. So when you are deciding which fonts to use in your design, focus on font families, or once again, open up Canva styles, and with every these have little pairings with them so you can get a full thing, but there's one that's specifically just for colors and you can see the names, and then there's one that's just for fonts. And again, it's going to show you the trending ones, the most popular, specifically in the app. I don't know that it's searching trends in the world, though they have graphic designers that work for Canva that I'm sure do keep up with all the trends, because their templates are always being updated. So you can go through and see fonts that they're pairing. And a font family is when you are going to go into text and you added a subheading. Sorry, I know that this is going to make this messy, but I'll take it down in a second. And you go to the fonts tab up here on the toolbar on the top of the screen. You will see Cooper Hewitt and then Cooper Hewitt Heavy. These are a part of a font family. So it's the same basic font at different weights. So next you'll see use opposite fonts to create contrast. And that's another thing that font families help you achieve, because you can use a heavy font for your header, and then you can use a lighter font for your body text or your subtext, or subheading is what it's called. And you'll see that here at a heading. I made a brand for yesterday's class. We made like a little brand kit. So my heading is this thick font. My subheading is still a thick font, but it's a little more playful. And then my body text is a thin font, or light font. They call them heavy and light, but thick, thin, whatever. Other opposites are tall fonts and short fonts. You can use a more playful font and then a more serious font. And a good example of that is right here in recently used. I'm going to come down here. This is my examples page. I need to just utilize it. Welcome, little one. And the top font is a very playful, bubbly font, while as the bottom is a sans serif, straight League Spartan. That's a very corporate, serious font. So, but pairing them makes them pop. Another way to pair fonts is to use a script font, so one that looks more like handwriting, and then a sans serif font, which is the like Cooper Hewitt is a sans serif font, as well as that League Spartan one we were just looking at. A serif font is going to have these little tails on all of the letters, whereas a sans serif font is going to not have those. There we go. Sans serif, serif. And there are tons of other ones, so you can play around in there. Modern and bold look good together, and so on and so forth. Like a minimal font with something that's more like calligraphy, or even the retro, if you found the right one, so you could pick a more artistic font and then a minimalistic font. Those opposites attract mentality works here, and it will just help different elements of your design pop. 2 to 3 fonts per design. That's our third point. You, again, want to keep it simple, because the more fonts you add, the busier your design gets. The more times the eye has to readjust to the new form of the alphabet it's being presented with, especially if you have a script font as your body text. Like, people are generally not going to mess with that. It's just a little too busy for most people. So if I'm just going to copy and paste this, because I just want, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Give me a second. I'm just trying to make a paragraph of text here. I could probably find one in a template, but I'm trying to not move out of the window too much. But if I copy that, paste. So if I changed this to a script font, or handwriting font is what they call it in here. Script is just another name for it. And I made my body text. Do you see how much harder that is to read? If you're really good at cursive reading, or you're the one that wrote it, you might think, no, I can read that. It just says add a little bit of body text over and over again. We know that's what it says. But if a person simply walked up to this, it would look like hieroglyphics to them for just a second, and it would take a while for them to adjust. And if you're advertising your business with that information all buried in the handwriting font, people likely won't stop and look at it. And if someone has difficulties reading, or there's somebody who has, a vision impairment, that means, they have to get kind of close up to it and, move their eyeglasses back and forth. It's going to be a lot easier for them to figure out what your design says if it's in a serif, sans serif simple font for body text. That's the bulk of your design. So in this design up here in work from home tips, the body text is everything underneath the numbers. The heading is work from home tips, and the subheading is let's help stop the spread of coronavirus. And then you've got, your subheadings for your numbers and then the body text. Boop. Okay, and that covered my last one. I thought that's what the next one was, but I was just hoping. So again, we're going to look at this. Work from home tips. You'll notice even the lightest color that they've picked provides contrast with the white they've used for the text. So when you have your palette, test that out. Do all of my colors work on top of each other? If I made, for instance, they didn't use this middle purple, this color. I don't want to try to name it, but this middle purple. They didn't put the dark indigo kind of text on top of that because it would be harder for you to pick it out. It doesn't pop. So they're like, you know what? No, we just use white the whole time. They probably could have gotten away with this really light purple on top of the indigo, but I appreciate the consistency of just having all of their text being the same color. I think because they have these blocks of color, the text doesn't really need to change color. They kept this very simple and it's very effective. I know exactly where to start. Work from home tips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know what I need to do. And when I look at this design, and this would be super easy for somebody who was maybe a little visually impaired or colorblind to see, regardless of those disabilities. And so let's build an example here. But I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but I am going to utilize the Canva style so you can see. Oh, I said cover text over photos and text effects. Good. I'm glad that I wrote that down because I definitely was not going to remember it. So let's go to styles. And I'm just going to pick from what we've got here. I really like Voga Fira Sans Medium. So when you click on this, it's going to automatically pull any design elements that you already have on your page into its style. So it's already decided nope, that's where that goes, and it changed my text over here and it changed my background. And it automatically made this work. Do you know what I'm saying? It automatically decided the text color is going to be a very dark color and the background color is going to be a very light color, so that there's contrast there. We can just say example. Look at that example. So let's so when you're using styles, the best way to do it is to just place some elements on the page and then click this button and then it will apply the style template to your design. And so it says Fira Sans Medium, and you can also brick shuffle and it'll change it. Very cool, but it always keeps it I didn't really like that last one, but it tries to keep it pretty well contrasty. And so we're going to cover doing text over photos as well, since we saw that in the earlier design and we want to know how we can do it more correctly. So we're going to pretend this is a little crystal store, I guess. That's what we're going to do because that's a good image and I like the way it fits in with our theme. So if I wanted to put for sale on top of this, I would go to my style. Fira Sans Medium is what it suggests for my subheading. So I'm going to come in here and say add a subheading. And then let's type it in. Fira Sans Medium. Boop. And now it's there. Say on sale now. Okay. So, design wise, it'd probably be better to put it down at the bottom. When you're, yeah, you know what? Let's just focus in on these three. I like this composition better. And that's another thing you can do in Canva. If you're like, I want to change kind of the way that this design is looking, you can click into the picture and you can crop it. You can decide what parts you want to be in the design. You know, maybe you like these three together better, whatever. I like these top three. So those are the ones I'm going to put in my image. So now I can put on sale now on here. And because that contrast is so good, you can read it and it's not really problematic. Another thing is I picked a picture that's not very busy in the background and it has a lot of negative space. So it's going to be a lot easier. So let's say I had a picture that did not have a lot of negative space. I'm trying to see. Here's one. Okay. Now it's a garden. Now we're advertising our bike shop. I don't know. And we wanted to say on sale now here. Wouldn't really work that well. There are some other colors in our styles, but you know, trying to get back to the white. But even this is like a little muddy. You know what I mean? It's there, but the contrast I wouldn't say is where we want it to be. So another thing that you can do is go into elements and go into shapes and create a shape that matches your picture, or even just the part of the picture that you want to put the text on. I've done that before. And place it over the image. And then we're going to go in the top right hand corner to this checkerboard that's slowly disappearing. It's called transparency. And we'll just bring that down to 60 for now. And let's change it to one of our colors. And it automatically provides, you know, we can still have our picture with the contrast as well. And you could do, because I'm using another template in here, it's trying to show me my other templates colors. So we're just going to use those momentarily so that I can show you. Yes, did that. I want to change this one now. There we go. Yeah. So now we can make our on sale now this like brighter blue color, right? And that provides enough contrast so that we can still add our image and it's still there, the elements of it are there, but I can place text on top of it without creating a messy design. So that was a little bit of a long-winded way to explain that, but we got there. So that pretty much covers contrast. There's a lot more exploring you can do on that, but we are going to move on to the next slide, which is about direction and consistency. There's one. So what you're going to talk about here is alignment and efficiency. So the alignment is where you're placing your elements. What should people see first when they look at your design, and where does their eye go afterwards? So for this design that we have up on here, open mic night, that's the first thing I see. There's not really a way for me to look at that where my eye doesn't immediately go there, because the yellow is really popping on the green. Now, you notice that green and red are complementary colors, right? They're the ones on either side of the spectrum on the color wheel. And they're both present in this design, but they chose to put the yellow color on open mic night. I think that was a smart choice, because when you layer complementary colors on top of each other, they become fairly difficult to read. And if you want just like an example of that, I'll do it in a second, but if you just put red text over a green background, and unless you really mess with the tints and the shades, meaning like the lightness and darkness of the green and the red, it's going to mess with your eyes. Another example is like pink, like hot pink and lime green. It creates this jittering effect that can give people headaches. So I appreciate that instead they went with yellow, because it's harmonious with red, right? It's near it on the color scheme. It is a warm color, whereas green is a cool color, which is going to provide the appropriate level of contrast. It grabs my attention and it doesn't hurt to look at. They've also done something here with color. I'm going to mention it real quick, and then I'll get on to direction and consistency, where they're using the 3 primary colors in this design: red, yellow, and blue. It's super playful and it's very effective. And then they've got the white for some added contrast. But again, 4 colors. That's it. That's all that's in this design. But it's so colorful and so playful, and I love it. So, back to this. Open mic night. They've done a great job of making sure that's where my eyes go. My eyes might venture over to the image elements of this design, but I'm drawn to keep reading because open mic night has grabbed my attention. I want to look at the next thing. August 31st. 8 p.m. Now I know when it is, and then I go right down strings bar. It has the address, everything, and then I've gotten all the way down to the bottom. And if I'm still interested for more information, I can contact Marty, and now I have his number. So easy to read, so easy to follow this design. Next on our list, grouping related items. You'll see they've answered the what is it in one block. Then in the next block, when is it? And then the last block, where is it? All of those things are grouped together. So if I'm wanting to know when it is, I know exactly where to go on my design, and I'll find all the information about when it is. And if I want to know where it is, I can find all the information about where it is. And then they've even grouped the for more information right down there with strings bar. So all of that is contact info and location information. That's very well thought out. And the last thing about alignment is keep it uniform. When you look at the blue block that says August 31st, 8 p.m., they're all aligned on the right side of the document. When you look at open mic and night are all aligned on the left side. And same for the strings bar, Washington Street, etc. This keeps your eyes going down in that direction just like they're supposed to. I'll show you in a second why even slightly altering this design makes it less effective. And then so that's direction and consistency. You're leading your audience and you're consistent with your design throughout. Another thing, don't be afraid to make multiple versions of your designs. Maybe pick a few different color palettes, pick a few different font families, and put together, I would say 3 to 4 is probably good. If you do any more than that, you're going to get yourself doing too much work, right, for the reward. But go ahead, spitball some ideas in your head, like throw them out there on the paper and just see which one speaks to you the most, feels the most effective and representative of the message you're trying to send. So now we're going to go on to efficiency. This one doesn't really need its own slide because it's very straightforward. Be efficient. Every element on your design has a purpose. Is it doing its job? And don't be afraid of negative space. This design is not a great example of utilizing negative space or being unafraid of it. Negative space is the parts of the design that have nothing in them. Nothing at all. And I think a better version of that is up here in this work from home design. There's negative space here. They didn't feel the need to add images, even though, you could have put like a mask and a little computer and some bunny slippers or whatever, and maybe they would have gone with your message. These are worked from home tips, your cell phone, whatever. Those are all relevant to the topic, but they wouldn't serve a purpose because this is simply a list. If I had pictures all over of computers and the color wheel, I didn't want to busy my slides so that you were not able to pay attention to them. Unlike this. There is a lot in these designs that serves no purpose. Because this Hollywood event does not seem to have a location, it doesn't really make sense to have that palm tree thing back there. It could just as easily be the white background with black font, and it might be even that simple thing alone would have made this, you could even keep all your color and everything, but just make all the rest of the text black and put it on a white background. That might have made it more effective because it was more efficient, because that palm tree did not give me enough did not add anything to the poster, unless it is, of course, taking place at the beach, though there is no location on there. And, for recycling day, I already covered that with the birds. So just make sure that everything you're adding to your design has a purpose and it is doing its job well. But again, if there's a bunch of negative space in your design, you've said everything you needed to say, and what is on your design works, there's no need to mess it up, There's no need to add more to it. Don't be an element hoarder and keep adding cute stickers to your design just because they're cute. You're going to find more often than not that it doesn't need it to be effective. So here is an example of me. Okay, never mind. When I put that in full screen, it got crazy. So we're just going to keep it here. Here's an example of me taking the design on the right that we saw on the previous slide and changing it up a little bit. Look at that. What about that makes it less effective? You'll see I decided to add some more elements, that I changed the alignment to be on multiple sides at the same time, and I moved some things around. When I look at the version that I made, Open Mic Night Strings Bar seems like the name of the event. And maybe eventually, if I continue to read, I'll put together that, Strings Bar is the place, or is it Open Mic Night Strings Bar, where this particular bar is always having an open mic night. I might never even see the date because it is in a green on blue text, which is not necessarily providing as much contrast. And then I've got the 8 p.m. at Washington Street, stringbar.co. It's a little muddy to me. I'm having a hard time telling where the address stops and the web address starts, why the time is up there. It's just all seems a little off. There's something about it that does not make it easy to flow through because of the way that the alignment is. Now I'm going to show you what I mean necessarily by alignment in case you're not sure. If you're editing text, or you can do this with elements too, but not specifically this alignment button. But if you select text, you can go up to the toolbar, and these different lines are alignment, and you can pick if you want it to align on the left side, on the right side, or in the middle. This one is supposed to kind of even out the spacing, but I've never really needed that one. Anyway, but just a simple moving them all to one side, right, helped the design's cohesion. You'll also notice I removed the red on this side, and I think it creates a blockage here with this Tetris piece looking thing that kind of makes me feel like Open Mic Night Strings Bar is a separate thing, and I could just like not even look at the rest of this text. There's something about it that just kind of blocks me off from the rest of the design. The red kind of opened it up just because of the changing colors. And then I also changed the "For more information, contact Mary" into bold text because I wanted to point out how much harder it is to read that phone number in bold text. It's just like I'm having a hard time telling the difference between the 8 and the zeros, personally. So those are all just some things to think about. And feel free to go in and look at the templates on Canva because they all do try to follow these design rules. And you'll see some that you're like, this is too busy for me. But they are all trying to follow the rule of contrast and efficiency and consistency throughout their design and leading your eyes, etc. Okay, so we have talked now about what is a functional design. So now let's talk about what is an accessible design, or what is accessible media. And I changed to media in the PowerPoint because I wanted to go over some elements that would only really be necessary for video or audio. So, what does accessible media mean, and what does it need? Accessible means taking into consideration people with disabilities. If somebody has color blindness, if somebody has a vision impairment, needs reading glasses, somebody has a maybe a less reading comprehension. There, we'll say it like that. So they could be a child, right? Or they could just simply be somebody who doesn't read a lot, doesn't have a lot of reading comprehension, but they can understand the basics of, putting the words together. But if they're not well versed in, like, they're not reading every day, some people don't, really read every day. And I've worked with people before where in our entire job, we never have to read anything. And if that's what you do for a living, big blocks of text written in script are not going to come as easy to you as a graphic designer, right? Or a librarian, or somebody who works with words all day, who's going to be able to pick out the alphabet a little bit easier. It's just bringing media to the people to every type of person, right? We want to be accessible. So things that needs, I've kind of already said some of them, but color blindness consideration, metadata, captions and transcripts, and for brands, this isn't necessary for literally every single design you make, but for brands or companies, corporations, ADA compliant style guides are going to be necessary for accessible media. So let's go to our next slide and talk about color blindness. There are 4 major types of color blindness. As you can see on my graphic on the right, there are more than just 4 types, and that graphic does not even cover every type of color blindness. There are like subsections inside of those, but it's too much information for this to try to decipher every single one. We're just going to look at the 4 major types. And then I'm going to show you some stuff that kind of helps you not have to remember every single type of color blindness every time you're making a design. So the 4 major types are listed here. It's deuteranopia, tritanopia, protanopia, and achromatopsia. Ooh. And you'll see right there, is it? Deuteranopia is going to be more green blind, though they can sometimes be affected by red as well. Tritanopia is blue and yellow blind. Protanopia is red blind, though again, they're sometimes going to be affected by green as well. That's just kind of how the cones work. I'm almost 100% sure the reason it's do and try and whatever is because there are 3 major cones. But I'm not a doctor. And then achromatopsia is obviously no color. They see everything on a gray scale. So what can you do to take into consideration colorblind people? Utilizing contrast is going to help you so much with that. And that's why, again, it's best to use less colors in your designs, because you can pick 3 or 4 colors that 2 are very, more similar on the color wheel, and then these 2 are very contrasted from each other. Or you can pick 2 colors and 2 neutrals. So everything is going to have a way to stand out on your design, regardless of whether or not you know color. So, how can I test a design to make sure that it works? There is a website called a color blindness simulator. And when you go to this site, you can upload your file, whatever it is, and click on these different types of color blindness and put your design to the test. Can I still read it? Will it be aesthetically pleasing to everybody? No, it absolutely won't be, because their range of colors might not be so aesthetically pleasing. And if you use only colors that are all right next to each other, monochrome is not gonna be able to really see it. So I'm gonna put one of my designs to the test so you can see how it works with a design. So we're gonna find out, is my design accessible? And this is the poster that I made for the class today. And since I'm talking about making functional accessible graphics, I hope mine holds up to the test. You'll see when I wanted to layer text over the image, I lowered the contrast of it and brought down the brightness so that way I could put this white font over here. And for the rest of my text, I was like, I'm just going to put it in a bubble. So let's go through. I'm just going to click every button so you can see. And again, some of them are not going to be super pretty. Like that one's kind of dirty looking. But I can still read everything on my graphic so far. I don't know what inverse lenses know. All that stuff does. I've never messed with this stuff before. But look at this, is made of pink. Somebody out there might be seeing this as pink. But even in monochromacy, you can read all of my text. And that's pretty much because I picked this mustard yellow background, right? So not a bright poppy yellow, a more subtle orange kind of color. And I put white and black on it. I didn't put another color on it. I didn't put a bunch of grays on it or things that I thought would run together. I was like, I'm just going to do contrast. And as far as my text fonts are concerned, it's all sans serif. Fairly easy to read. And yeah, so you can put any of your designs on this website, and it will help you decide whether or not your design is going to be accessible to the colorblind. Now, every single time you're making a design, depending on your audience, you may not want to consider this, but if you're working for a nonprofit organization or a college, or you're running your own business, you're going to want to consider these people because they are a part of your audience, and it's not something that we're always thinking about, especially if you're not colorblind. So another tool you can use to consider color blindness, right, is this one that helps you put together color palettes that are accessible. So you won't have to go to the color blindness simulator because you will already know that this is a good color palette for this, for your needs. Goodness me. Effects not there yet. Oh, I ended up not even talking about that. Honestly, I went on too long, so that's just going to be one of those things. Anyway, so this is colorsafe.co, and I'm going to link all of these websites in the description after the stream. So I'm going to, real quick, it's just colorsafe.co. You just hit get started, and you put in any information that you already have, and then you say generate a color palette. Okay. And it's gonna like help you put together the palette, and it will give you the hexes again. Anyway, play around with that, see how that goes, and help you. It will help you consider color blindness. Metadata and captions. Metadata is also known as alt tags or alt data. If someone is blind and they are using an e-reader or some other program, right? Any program that reads out the text on screen to you. When they come to a photo, if it does not have alt text, it's not going to read anything to them. So if you put up a flyer advertising a bake sale and somebody who's blind comes across it online, obviously, not in real life, the e-reader will simply be unable to tell them anything about it unless you add alt tags or alt data. On Instagram, etc., there's usually a place to enter alt text. You're also welcome to put an image description in the description or the caption. That's like, this is everything that's in this poster. So that way people who are, who are looking at your poster and I'm like, man, I wish I knew what that said, because they're, just really have a very strong vision impairment or are blind. The e-reader will just read out what the image is, what all the text says, etc. Another way e-readers can find the metadata on your design is if you save it as a PDF or another form of document that uses Unicode. Canva uses Unicode. So if a blind person was on Canva, it would just read out to them everything that's on the screen, everything they're typing. It can read it out to them. But the best thing to do is save it as a PDF. So if you are operating a website and you can upload your flyer on there as a PDF, that would allow for a blind person to click on that, and it will keep all of the text information in it. It's usually pretty easy to add alt tags. Alt text is what it's called on Instagram, alt text, and on Facebook, I think, to these designs. I would just research how to do it, and it will create a more accessible design. Real quick, captions and transcripts. If you're making a video or a podcast, include captions or a transcript for the hearing impaired. There are many resources for auto-generated caption and transcription services. It's just something I would look into. There are tons of free ones, so it's totally cool. And I have used the caption generator on Instagram as well. When you're uploading videos, it might be on Facebook. I have a creator studio, so it uploads to both of them at the same time. That's a good thing to utilize. Creator Studio for Facebook and Instagram, since they're the same company, and they have an automatic caption generator, and it will go through your video and add the captions and it will even do like start stop, where like a sentence stops and begins, and you can go through and just like edit just in case the auto generator made any mistakes, and it takes like 10 minutes. I mean, unless it's a really long video. For transcripts, there are services that will transcript your videos. I used to work for one, or transcript your podcasts, etc. I used to work for one, and it's super cheap. So I would just look into that stuff if you're a podcast person, video person. ADA compliant style guides. So this is only applicable to people who are making a style guide or a brand kit, etc. This is something that I would just research. If it applies to you, you can look up MTSU's style guide. I have examples here that I will put in the description down below, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. But a style guide is basically just how can I use, for if you have a team and they're all making graphics. It's a guide for how can I use the logo? How can I use the colors in our palette, and how can I use the fonts? So letting people know this is the heading font, this is the subheading font, this is body text font. Only put these color fonts on these color backgrounds. Only put these colors together. Vanderbilt, one of their rules is you cannot have a gold graphic with white text because there is not enough contrast in those two colors. So do your research, look up examples, take notes, and use the resources provided in this presentation and in the description below to help you along the way. So that is that. I'm going to get to questions in just a second, but just so you know, if you want to learn more about how to utilize Canva for your designs, your social media, and your branding for your business, there is a tab called Learn, Canva Learn. So if you just type in canva.com, and I'm fairly certain this works for free and pro, but I got a pro account to do my class yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to see if there are any of these that are specific to pro, but usually if something is pro on Canva, it will have a crown next to it. Even if you've already paid for it, it will still have a crown next to it, just to let you know this is something you're getting with Canva Pro. There are tons of tutorials, including tutorials that will bring you into a design and give you instructions on how to put it together so that you can do it yourself. And they're super helpful. So graphic design basics, click that, and it will bring you to sorry, I forget she automatically starts going. It will bring you to, you'll see I've watched these videos because they're good, and it will bring you to these super easy to digest, usually 1 to 3 minute long videos. There is a transcript available if you are unable to watch but would like to read about it. And there's a list of the people who you're hearing and why they are worth listening to. So it shows you. These are people who work in the industry, and you can get your source. That's who I'm listening to. And I find them so easy to digest, simple to understand, and every once in a while there will be a lesson and then an activity that you can do, which will, like I said, bring you into a design and give you some prompts on what to do. Not only are there videos, but there are tutorials that take you through designs as well and teach you how to put things together. So if you want to do any further learning on Canva, I would highly suggest utilizing the Learn tab. Okay, I'm going to check to see all this stuff. But anyway, thank you so much for coming. Since I don't see any questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. But I really appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful night.